Hey everyone, welcome to Moreality, your channel for React Native content. Today we're going to be talking about the useId hook, and I'll give you a quick example on how to use it. So first off, let's start with what it is. useId is a hook for generating unique IDs that are stable across the server and client while avoiding hydration mismatches. Keep in mind that useId is not for generating keys in a list. Keys should always be generated from your data. useId generates a string that includes the colon token. This helps ensure that the token is unique, but is not supported in CSS selectors or APIs like query selector all. Lastly, useId supports an identifier prefix to prevent collisions in multi-root apps. You can configure this by checking out the options for Hydrate Root and React DOM Server. So today we're going to be showing you an example of how to create a unique ID for each employee in an array that will be displayed using a React Native component called a FlatList. So let's go ahead and jump into the code. So we're going to go to, firstly we ran Expo start. We have our iPhone 14 Pro Max simulator running, and I typed Expo start to get this running, and right now we just have this output on the screen called useId in React Native, two text components. So now we're going to go to our src folder. We're going to add a file. We're going to call it useid hook.js. We're going to type rfne, React Native functional export component, press enter. This gives us our code snippet we could see right here. Now we'll go back to app.js. Right under this text, we're going to add our useId hook component. Self-closing. You can see the import here. I like to just separate my third-party and local imports by a line so I can keep track of all my imports in a more organized manner. Okay, so first what we're going to do is just very simply, I'll show you some IDs. So we'll say ID1 is equal to useId, and what we need to do is, we're getting this error because we need to import useId. So I go to the end of whatever I want to import, in this case useId, put my cursor there, press Control Space, then I import it right here. Now we can see it's imported from React. Okay, so we have that, and then we'll do another one. We'll call it ID2. We'll use ID for that. Again, using tab 9 to do some auto completions here. Feel free to pause the video or rewind if you need to have more time to type it in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, remove this. We're going to say ID1 is going to be ID1. Now we can see it being displayed here. Let's make the font a little bit bigger. Okay. We'll say font size. We'll make it say 20. And then we'll do, I'm going to throw a margin bottom here of say 20 as well. What I want to do is copy and paste this line. We're going to call this ID2. Okay, so now you can see ID1 and ID2 are being displayed right here. So we get colon R9 colon for ID1 and colon RA colon for ID2. So you can see that these are unique IDs that were being given from the useId hook. So now let's go ahead and create a list of dummy data called employees. So we could go ahead and create that right here. We'll say const employees. So this is going to be set up as an array of objects. So So our first employee will have ID. We're going to say useId. And then we're going to have the name. We'll say John. And then we're going to have title. It's going to be CEO. Okay, so let's create, we're going to copy and paste that 3 times, so we'll have a total of 4 employees here. Okay, and then this one we're going to have Sarah, make her the CFO. So we're going to have Connor, he's going to be the CTO. And if you haven't caught it yet, these are all from names from the movie The Terminator. And we'll make him the CIO. So now what we want to do is, I'm going to put one more text component right here. We're going to call this employees. And I'm going to make the font on this one size, say 40. There we go, a little bit bigger. Let's go ahead, style our view component. We're going to give it a flex of 0.5. The reason for that is I want to keep this use ID in React Native up here. So I'm going to have it take half of the screen, and then I'm going to create a flat list that's going to go under employees right here. That'll take up the other half. Put a margin top of, say, 40. Then we want to justify content to center. And then we want to align items to center. Okay. All right, that looks better. Okay, so now a few things we need to do to implement the flat list. We're going to need to render, we need a render function, which is called render item. So let's go ahead and set up FlatList right here real quick. Import it from React Native to self-closing component. And here's what we're gonna have. We're gonna have data equal to employees, which we have already, so that's fine. We're gonna have render item is going to be called render item, which we don't have yet. So let's go ahead, create that right here, render item. Create an array function, an arrow function, and then we'll have a key extractor property here, which is going to be item.id. Okay. Then above this we need to put const item. So this is the item that we're going to be rendering. Arrow function, and we're going to be returning a view with 3 text components inside. And you'll see why in just a second. So let me go ahead and say title dot.title. I'll explain all this in 1 second once we get it set up. Style is going to be equal to, we're just going to make the font size a little bit bigger so you guys can see it easier. Okay, so now copy and paste that 2 more times, and now we're going to change this to name, and this is going to be title.name, and then this is going to be ID. It's going to be title.id. Okay, so what we're doing here is the item that we're going to be rendering is a view component with 3 text components inside. And as you can see from the employees data right here, we're going to display the title first. So for example, CEO, and then the name, so John, and then the ID will be whatever unique ID is returned by the useId hook. So now what we want to do is we're going to say we'll destruct item, and then we're going to use our item component we just created above, self-closing. We'll pass the title prop to it, and we're going to say item section clearly. Notice again that we have R1M, R1N, R1O, R1P, R1Q, and R1R, which are all unique IDs still. So let's go ahead and add that margin to the last element, our last component, and we'll say margin bottom of say 20. There we go, it looks a lot better. So now we have here is, again, title CEO, name John, ID, colon R1S colon. And now the employees are much easier to see in this scroll view, or flat list. So as you can see, that about wraps it up for this example. You can see that useId does generate unique IDs. And I showed you how to create a list of employees or an array of employees and assign them each a unique ID using the useId hook. And then I showed you how to display them. So that completes it for today. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down below, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. If there's any other content you would like to see, please leave that down below too, and we'll try to make a video on it. We have a few more days of hooks. We'll be talking about useRef, useLayout effect, a couple other effects coming up as well. And then once we finish that, we're going to get into setting up AWS Amplify authentication. We'll show you how to set up Google's Firestore database. Then we'll show you a few other things and then get into full builds. So please continue to keep watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another video. Thank you. Bye.